Can you hear me? What is up, Scuttlebutt Nation? There's a lot of buttons to push when you go live here on the YouTubes, but I see a nice group of people backstage. Everybody wave. Everybody wave. There you go. They follow instructions quite well. What is up, chat? This is Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. You are watching us live here on Saturday night, straight from the Citadel. Yeah, so we're gonna be talking about Ahsoka episode 6. Far, far away. What an exciting episode. Or maybe it's not exciting. Maybe it sucked. I don't know what the panel has has to say. Maybe they didn't like it. Maybe they thought it was hot garbage, or maybe they thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know. We'll have to find out. We've got a nice panel of peeps here. As I said in the chat, we've got some peep panels waiting backstage, and we have a wonderful array of people in the chat. Rural Farm Boy. Who was first? Let's go up here. Skywalker's Academy. Are we ready for this? Of course we are, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Ubaldo, what is happening? You got your drinks and snacks ready? Absolutely. Rural Farm Boy, thanks for showing up. We've got some wonderful folks. Let's see who else is in there. You got me. You got Science Fictionary. What is up, sir? Good to see you. David is in the house. Animated David. I love that little icon there. Excellent. So we got a nice group of people in the chat. We're going to be talking about Ahsoka. I'm going to be bringing in our panel in a minute or two, but I just wanted to give everybody a chance to catch up. Oh, and I do have an announcement. So if you guys have been listening to the podcast, I know I had put together a giveaway. And where is that thing? Oh, it's over there. It's over there. Anyways, I put together a giveaway during the audio version of the Kai Patterson interview. I know a lot of people have been listening to the Kai Patterson YouTube interview, which was really great. Look that up if you're interested in having to hear what Kai Patterson said about the Kenobi edit, his re-edit. I know a lot of people were coming down on him for having done that, but I thought it was interesting. As an editor myself, I thought, oh, this is a kind of an interesting, thing to talk about. So I interviewed him, and in the audio portion of that interview, I had a little giveaway. So, and I forgot, what is it that I gave away? Oh, it's the Marauder Micro Series ship from Bad Batch, and I know a couple people have entered already, so thank you very much. I'm going to make sure that folks know about the giveaway, because yeah, I love giving stuff away. We got some latecomers. Our friend Crystal Kyber. What is up, Crystal? She's got an awesome show. Follow her for more makeup and Star Wars tips. I could use a little foundation, a little color in my cheeks there, but absolutely. All right. So, needless to say, we're going to be talking about Ahsoka. I'm going to push a couple of buttons, and I'm going to bring that giveaway over here so we can take a look at it one last time before we close the show. In the meantime, enjoy this countdown, and I'm going to bring over our folks. We start talking about Ahsoka. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, or something like that. All right, we'll be right back.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Yes, sirree. And the ultimate power in the universe is my lovely panel here. We've got Ambrose, Geeky Ambrose from Geek News Network. What's up, man?
Doing well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can see you. And that is always a good start. Thank you very much.
I usually don't do it without the headphones, but I tinkered around because I understand I was having some issues last time. So want to make sure.
All right. Appreciate it, my friend. And the first time here at the Citadel, we've got Ray. What is up,
everyone?
Man?
I'm just having a good time this Saturday night.
Quick question. Have you read all those books behind you, or?
Well, since it's just a canvas, no, I have not.
I think I got that background for production. That's too funny. And straight from the gaming community, we've got Amanda from Level Up Podcast, or Level Up. What was it again? I keep forgetting because
Level Up Arcade.
Level Up Arcade. Yep. And last time you said there was a number there, and I can't remember. I can't remember the number because I always start plugging
Twitter
it in,
handle,
and there you are.
The Twitter handle is Level Up Arcade 15. So,
all right. So go follow Amanda and Gilbert. You guys are having a new show. What, next week?
Yes, next Saturday. Yes.
Excellent. All right. What are you guys talking about?
We are talking about the Assassin's Creed franchise. So all about the games, kind of like a nice little build up in talking about the story for the big launch of the next game, which comes out October 5th. So
very nice. Very nice.
What's your favorite in the franchise so far, if you don't mind my asking?
Probably Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is my favorite of all of them. Yep.
Excellent. Ambrose, you got some fans in the chat.
Clearly it's not my family. All right, awesome.
It's always good to be loved. It's always good to be loved. All right. So during the intro, I went ahead and I grabbed that giveaway, but here's what I'm giving away. It's the Bad Batch ship, the Marauder. It's actually really cool. If you have not submitted your entry, please do so. You got to listen to the Kai Patterson audio version podcast, and I give details on how to enter. And if you are a patron listening and or watching, you are automatically entered. So thank you very much for that. And I think next week I will do the wonderful taking the name out of a hat situation, and we'll announce a winner. So. Very nice. Let's see here. All right. The Ahsoka episode. I want to go around the room and just kind of really get some quick, 1 to 2 sentence reaction on the episode. I know last week we had quite a show of force, pun intended, with the return of Anakin, which gave us fans a lot to talk about. But this time around, no Anakin, but there's still, some really nice tidbits to talk about. So let's go around the room and start with Ambrose. What are your quick thoughts on episode 6?
Quick thoughts. The show has not failed to. I'm trying to quick thoughts. It's not disappointing at all. It's really good. Every episode is really good, and this episode just left me with a lot of questions that I hope get answered and don't be left on cliffhangers, because I hate having to wait. So,
Yeah, impatient you are, Padawan.
I definitely would fail that test.
Yeah, but some cliffhangers are good. Gives fans kind of a little bit of an excitement, something to talk about and speculate, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, Ray, what about you?
I've been enjoying this show since the beginning. This episode it had an interesting pacing to it to me, because it was slow. It felt slow, but there were a lot of big things that were revealed in the episode. So I kind of felt that was odd. But one of the things I really liked about the episode was the, I don't know if it's wolves, whatever they are. But I thought that their particular look in animatronics or CGI or some combination of was really good. So like that piece of sort of world immersion, I thought was really good for the episode. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I think the reason that I liked it a lot, and I don't want to say more than the Anakin episode, because for me, watching Anakin and having Anakin back in the show and really in his Jedi garbs was really a treat for fans, for me. And I think there's an aspect obviously of nostalgia that worked on me. Just having had the actor come back and do some stuff was really great. This episode was great for other reasons. I think one of the reasons that I enjoyed it is because it was so new, it was so fresh. You didn't know what to expect. You're in this other galaxy, and the sky's the limit when it comes to the creation of this lore that is kind of new for fans. Amanda, what about you?
Yeah, so I've been enjoying the show from the very first episode. So far every episode to me almost seems to get better and better. I mean, this episode isn't as good as episode 5 was, but I really enjoyed it. I love the slow build up. I liked how Thrawn was introduced into this episode. I think that was my personal highlight, was how Thrawn was introduced in this episode.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Were there any let's kind of go through the episode a little bit. We've got we leave our heroes inside the mouth of the space whales, the Purgle, and they're traveling. I like that little conversation that Ahsoka was having with Hu Yang, and I think it really surprised a lot of fans to hear David Tennant, finally say that the lines, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It was really surprising. And then, who would have thought that it was going to be a doctor who said that line, a Doctor Who. Was there anything early in the episode that you guys really loved, or something that jumped out at you guys?
You mean in that first scene in the
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot. They were talking, Hu Yang was talking about the stories and the history of the, I guess, what was it, the history of the galaxy, part 1, 2, and 3, or
yeah.
And I, like tongue in cheek, I was very much anticipating the fact that fans were going to kind of latch on to that, saying that, part 1 is obviously the prequels, and then you got the original trilogy, and then you got the sequels. So, having Dave Filoni, he's a self-proclaimed fan of the prequels. Obviously, Ahsoka saying, and number 1 is the best. So, what'd you guys think of that?
I thought what I thought was interesting about it was they're alluding to the origins of the galaxy far, far away being in a different galaxy far, far away is kind of what I took from what they were saying, with the context of the Purgil and the context of them going out to a different galaxy, and that being, I think, associated to the stories that the young Jedi were told at the temple, right? So kind of putting all that together, it feels like one of those stories is the one that Hu Yang is telling that has to do with something from the other galaxy, but they don't actually tell us that, which I assume there, two reasons. Probably because they don't want to invent all that if it's not important to the story, but also probably keeping it for reveals later. But it is somewhat frustrating to have it referenced multiple times. This sort of bedtime story stuff that for the Jedi, yet it's not actually revealed to us. But I thought the way they packaged it at the beginning was good though overall.
Yeah. Do you feel like maybe the lore of a galaxy far, far away? Do you feel that maybe this is the galaxy that they're talking about, and what they're talking about specifically is the Force, like the Force originated from this galaxy far, far away, and somehow it came to the known galaxy. And again, I don't know what the lore is in the High Republic books. I only read the first one, and it, I really wasn't digging the story, so I kind of stopped. But yeah, I feel like they are setting up so much when it comes to early Force lore, and especially because you've got the the witches doing their magic, and Star Wars is I said it last week, Star Wars is getting ready to get a little freaky. But what are your that great observation, Ray. What are your what is everybody's thoughts on finally getting to this other galaxy? What did visually, what did you guys think?
So one
Amanda.
thing that I thought was interesting was the Purgle great burial ground. It reminded me a lot of an elephant graveyard. And something that I believe Andrew brought up in his show, which I think is a really important point, is Purgle are so connected kind of to the Force too in a way, and this whole idea of them returning possibly to their birthplace to die, just like salmon do, they go back to where they were birthed to die. I think possibly this could be it, and that is another connection to this kind of origin of the forces on this planet. There's like a really if there's a connection with the Purgle, there's a connection with the Night Sisters now. I think this planet is a lot more than it seems already. And visually, just seeing that great Purgle graveyard kind of to me connects that.
Right. And the logical side of my brain is like, wait a minute, flesh doesn't decay in space, so what the hell's going on here?
No. Well, living whales don't survive in space either, so who knows what. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're basically telling me to touch grass. I understand.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying we don't know what kind of flesh they have, I guess is what I was sort of saying. One of the things that's interesting to me visually, just real quick, is the hyperspace visuals, because they're slightly different. They have this rainbow sort of prism quality to them that normal hyperspace doesn't. And I wonder if that's supposed to give us signify that they're either going faster or in a different higher plane or something of hyperspace. Because my one critique, of course, is that they immediately get to the other galaxy. They're not like 70 years older or something like that. But yeah, it is Star Wars. So
yeah, that's a good observation. And I, again, going back to, the physics of things, it's like, are they folding space, quicker, or are they traveling faster? But Ambrose, what about you? Early scenes. What stands out for you?
Well, one, I want to know if now the whole saga is being told to us from episode 4 on in 1977 by Hu Yang. Is he actually the narrator of this whole thing? Which is something that came to mind.
Right.
And early things, I think. What's his name? Balin definitely knows something is up, and he wants to get off that planet as soon as possible. Shin is starting to show some emotion, which is odd. There was a shift in her tone. There was a shift in her tone throughout this episode. She wasn't as cold. And Thrawn's entrance, as always, was elegant. That's what I have for the early part of the show. It was as elegant as you'd imagine it to be. And it just, made the episode unfold that much better.
Yeah, one of the things that really intrigues me, especially when we go to a new planet in Star Wars, is what does the planet look like? I really enjoyed the what's up, Phil? I really enjoyed the statues. I love the statues. The ruins of Jeddah, when we see stuff like that in Rogue One, I really love seeing all that stuff. And you've got some tall statues on this planet, and it really kind of adds to the lore. It adds to the lore of what it is that we're. I mean, again, I'm always fascinated at seeing all this new stuff, especially if we're getting to a new world. So I love them.
One of the things that in that initial scene with Ahsoka and Hu Yang that I thought was interesting and juxtaposed slightly from the end of the previous episode, where she was kind of like Gandalf the White, right? She's smiling, she's kind of like lightened up. And in the very beginning of this episode, she's right back to being sort of like sourpuss about Sabine, right? and Hu Yang's trying to give her a little bit of like, well, maybe she made the only choice for her, maybe blah blah. And he kind of also tweaked her a little bit on the Force gives you guidance, but it doesn't tell you everything, right? Almost a little bit of an arrogance thing. That he was trying to give her a little bit of guidance that way. So I found that interesting in the fact that she didn't seem to be carrying that lightness with her into this episode, although we didn't see her after that, but at least for that scene.
Yeah, it's funny because she mentions that she didn't get enough time with Sabine for her to make the right choice. And it's almost like, I don't know, they set it up in a weird way where it almost seems like it's like Sabine's fault for choosing, to kind of, try and rescue Ezra, or at least go with Baylan.
I think I think pretty clearly that is the Jedi answer, right? And that's the no attachments answer. That's the answer that I think is the official line, right? You wouldn't choose this if you were a good Jedi. You would choose to let Ezra go, and you would choose to keep Thrawn away. And I'm interested in why Filoni's bringing that up, right? What's the purpose of it, of so much of what Ahsoka and Sabine have been talking about and interacting with, leading to that decision, and then the aftermath of that? What is he trying to tell us about everything? And then when you throw Baylan and Shin in there, and they're sort of I'm going to say gray Jedi. I don't mean that, but the sort of moral ambiguity to those characters, and yet sort of an honorable sort of stance from Baylan. Like, it's interesting that he's showing us all these facets of potential Jedi-esque decision making and ways of being, and whether or not he'll come down on anyone, if we'll just get the same, hey, this is the way a Jedi are supposed to be. Sabine made the mistake, and it cost the galaxy, and maybe Ezra dies, whatever. We'll see. But it's interesting that he's having those conversations within the show.
Well, especially interesting too, because Ahsoka left the Jedi Order for some of those reasons, and now she's kind of spitting them out as gospel. And it's like, wait a minute, didn't you left the Jedi Order for for those reasons that you didn't agree with? So yeah, it is interesting. I want to we'll get back to the Jedi stuff, but I do want to discuss a little bit of the conversations that Baylan and Shin were having, because there were not just one conversation. I think every so often you would go back to them and they would discuss some more things. But I'm wondering what you guys think is calling to Baylan. Who wants to take that one?
I think
oh,
you go ahead.
You want to go ahead? Okay.
Nope.
I think it's something. I kind of think maybe it's the Force itself. Maybe this is the point of it all. Is this planet.
Yeah, right. And going back to my earlier comment regarding, a place where the Force started. And Baylan was talking too about cycles and how he wants this cycle to end. The fall of the rebellion and the rise of the Empire, the fall of the Empire, the rise of the First Order, et cetera, all that stuff. So there is kind of a cyclical moment where he's tired of it, and he wants. I guess he's seeking for that either knowledge or that item or something, the MacGuffin, if you will, to have that cycle stop. But I wanted to ask you guys, okay, so he wants the cycle to stop, but we know what happens, after this, because obviously we we know what the story is for the sequels.
The sequels, yeah.
But what is it that you guys think is going to help him find a way to make this cycle stop? And apparently, does he succeed? No, because we got the First Order in the fall of the. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, do you think it could be Death of the Force, possibly?
Well,
if there's no more Jedi Sith, then you wouldn't have that cycle repeating itself constantly.
And do you think that perhaps, oh God, I hate to say this, but Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi was talking about how if he eliminates himself from the equation, then I always contend.
Remember, Luke also says, I know you hate The Last Jedi, but Luke says the Jedi need to basically die. That's one of his lines. The Jedi need to end. And maybe this is another connection to that, possibly maybe the whole idea of Death of the Force.
I think Skrull is definitely... I think we're on our way to a redemption arc for him and Shin. Because one, Shin really has expressed her disdain for the Night Sisters and witches in general. Something happened there in her childhood where she has a certain disdain for witches. And
do you think that's a specific disdain for witches, or do you think that's kind of like an overall general disdain for witches because he has heard or she has heard?
I would think it's specific just because of the way she addresses them. And that trio of witches wants to get off that planet, so we don't know what's going on. So what I'm seeing here is Balin and Shin are going to find out that they're expendable. I see a redemption arc coming, and I see them teaming up with Sabine and Ezra. And I don't know where it's going to go from there, but I think that's what's going to happen. And Ray has been putting his finger up for a minute. I want to.
Ray's got his hand up.
I had a thought. So I have two thoughts. Hold on 1 second. My kid's kind of nope. Is my kid's trying to come in? Okay. So I know. I was expecting it. It's right around bedtime. Okay, so two thoughts. First, to the cycle question, it's interesting to me that we keep on bringing up cycles when the old Republic stood for 25,000, not 25,000. How many thousands of years did the Republic stand? Like the cycle idea is new, kind of. Everyone talks about it like we've gone through all these cycles. But we've only gone through kind of a couple of them that we know of. I mean, if you want to go back to the Sith Empire and you want to go back to the Old Republic stuff, there were some cycles there. But I feel like I'm not really sure what the whole cycle thing's supposed to mean. This goes back to the balance of the Force and all that stuff. But setting that aside and accepting that there's cycles they're concerned about, I would say narratively, this is the point at which Balin finds out what he's looking for is not what he expects. He's not going to get what he expected. Right? He thinks he's trying to go to find some greater good. He's trying to find something that's going to help him end the cycles. And by him, when he says end, he may not mean negatively end, but complete, finish, whatever it is. And what he might find is that the thing that he is discovering wants to end it, right? Destroy type of thing. And that could be the death of the Force, or it could be some sort of takeover of the Force, or it could be some, who knows exactly what it is. But I do wonder if he's going to find something he's not expecting, and that will force him into the working with Sabine and Ezra. And it kind of, not to say that they kind of tip their hat to it, but he said the enemy of my enemy is my friend in that episode, and either the thing that he finds or the fact that Thrawn basically said, "Hey, go out there and eliminate all of them whenever they find Ezra. I don't care." I think that also could be the sort of thing that brings them together. But specifically, not sure what he's going to find. I mean, don't know.
Yeah, somebody had speculated that this world is also the world where what's his name, the Bendu originated from. And I know, Dave Filoni introduced the Bendu in the Rebels episode, and it was kind of a fascinating character. A lot of people thought he was kind of a little bit ambiguous, but I think, when Kanan and Jarrus encountered the Bendu, the Bendu accused him of carrying great conflict. and Kanan was kind of confused, like, no, conflict, no, I'm a light side user, and the Bendu was almost like offended that somebody would claim that the Force has a light and a dark side, and I found that interesting too in itself. So as far as like ending the cycle, maybe there's something there to that.
Didn't the EU toy with that a little bit during the New Jedi Order part? They toyed with the idea of there not being a dark side, not being a light side, that there was and I don't remember exactly in what context. It's been a long time since I read those books, but I think they dabbled in that idea as well.
Yeah, they did dabble in that idea as well, that there was like no light side, no dark side. There was just the Force kind of like aspect in the New Jedi Order. So
And I think that was proved to be wrong. Was that like, I think they came down and said that wasn't correct, or that was.
That it did. It came out that wasn't correct, that there was light side and dark side, but there was like this debate within the New Jedi Order series about that idea, because the Yuuzhan Vong you couldn't detect with the Force or anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the narrative, outside of Star Wars, the narrative, if you think about, I think a lot of what we deal with is the fact that Lucas didn't define things necessarily. It evolved over time, and then some things are just not defined. Like I find, or they seem contradictory. For instance, in a way, specifically the balance. Yet there's the light and the dark, but the balance doesn't mean a balance between the two. It just means the light. And then you have the Bendu, like all these things that then got added on sort of later. I know that that's Rebels, which is post his time, but Mortis and all that stuff was during the Clone Wars. So like, there's definitely layers of things where you can kind of go different directions. And it'd be curious to me whether or not Filoni, obviously he and Lucas had a relationship. So I think the things he's introducing in this show probably tie back to things he had discussions with Lucas about during his time working with him. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls forward. But I'm surprised that, to go back to what Ro was saying about Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Temple, I'm surprised that when we've seen Ahsoka and Luke in this time period, that they are still so wedded to the sort of old order way. And they're not question any of it. I mean, Luke didn't even know any of it last time we saw him in Return of the Jedi, and then he shows up and he sort of like drank the Jedi Kool-Aid, and he's preaching to to convert people.
Yeah, and it's we have to also remind ourselves regarding the I guess the definition of the Force, or the explanation of certain things that you mentioned, Ray, that George Lucas took this concept of a Force, and it basically it's all religions kind of clumped into one, and it was up to the viewer to kind of sign assignment to it, which I find that fascinating. I find that interesting in the respects of how George Lucas kind of created this thing. And I don't know if I would ever want the Force to be specifically assigned some sort of definition, because I think the back and forth of fans as we see it is an interesting dialogue. I think there are a lot of ideas out there that are worth kind of exploring when it comes to the Force and Star Wars, especially because the franchise is so old that it's been around for a long time. There's all sorts of new ideas and new creatives behind the scene that are introducing stuff. And you're right. I think a lot of stuff that Filoni is starting to kind of drip into the narrative does come from his conversations and his time with George Lucas, with the Clone Wars, and even some of it with the Rebels animated show. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing where all of this new stuff leads. Like I said, get ready for Star Wars to be a little more freaky deaky here, because the witches and the dark magic and the Bendu. I mean, if we get any inclination of, as far as the Bendu is concerned, I think if fans aren't confused now, they certainly will once that aspect comes to play. Mm-hmm. Why haven't we seen any of the Ahsoka owls?
Maybe they're coming.
Maybe it's one too many things. Maybe they decided that's a step too far. It's too confusing. Let's not bring Mortis into it as well.
Well, I mean, a lot of people already are doing some Mortis comparisons. But let's sidetrack a little bit. We get to see Thrawn first time in the flesh, and obviously he sounds fantastic. I know there was a little hubbub on the interwebs about his appearance. Seems like he stopped using that elliptical for a while, but so have we all. But what do you guys think of the and if you have the captions on during the episode, those stormtroopers were called night troopers, and somebody mentioned cargo from the catacombs, and you see them kind of carrying some sort of like weird human length shaped devices into the Star Destroyer. But how cool was it to see Thrawn come to life here in this show?
I mean, it was cool, but I kind of, it begs the question, they were both taken into hyperspace. Why didn't Ezra finish the job?
Well, yeah, that was actually one of the things that I had posted. I'm like, they went together and now they're separate. So what is the story? How did they separate? Why is one not talking about the other? Are they searching for each other? Is Ezra hiding from Thrawn? Is Thrawn actively searching for Ezra? But what is the story that took place that separated them?
Because if I was Ezra, while we were going through hyperspace, I would have just be sure, just like jigged him a couple of times and just made sure he was dead. Then I don't understand how both of them are how one didn't kill the other.
Oh my God, Thrawn needs
that's a really good point, and also like there must have been some kind of struggle on that Star Destroyer too when it went into hyperspace. Like Ezra was there with the troopers and Thrawn. There must have been some kind of struggle, and how did Ezra even get out alive? Right. I mean, yes, he's a Jedi, of course, but still vastly outnumbered and still just a Padawan.
I would assume that once they were in hyperspace and Thrawn figured that they were going, that Ezra had done something, right? Called the Purrgil, and they were going into hyperspace. Mm-hmm. I would assume Thrawn would keep him alive, not knowing whether or not Ezra could get them back. Or, I mean, you got to figure he's the only guy that can use the Force, right? That Thrawn knows of. Like, much rather have him alive than kill him and potentially not be able to make use of him later. That feels like a Thrawn thing to me. At least, although I'm coming at it only from EU Thrawn, not from canon Thrawn. I apologize. I haven't read the Thrawn books. But so that would be my reason why he would keep Ezra alive, because you don't know if you're going to need him at some point. I mean, no, he's a threat, but obviously he's not going after Thrawn for some reason. So
that we know of. I mean, we spent just a few minutes, hugging Sabine and saying, "I can't wait to get out of here." Yeah, well, 2 episodes left, so I'm really hoping that they would tie tie this as a loose end, because it really is, to me. I was like, wait a minute, why aren't they asking about each other, and how did they get separated?
I don't think we're going to get the answer, because I don't think that we got the answer to what Ahsoka has been doing all the way through the original trilogy. Like, we didn't even really get much of an answer about her and Sabine and exactly like how that came about and exactly why it stopped. Right. I mean, right. So I just don't think he's that interested in it. And to be completely honest with you, even in the flashback, even in the look backwards that we got in episode 5 with Anakin, I'm not sure what we got out of that. Like, I'm not sure what the actual message was out of that. I understand live or die. I understand what they were telling us, but I watched that again last night with my son, and I still couldn't from scene to scene pick out where the through line was on that. So my point being, I'm not sure Filoni's interested in looking backwards and giving us a blow-by-blow detail. I think he's just like, that's for the comics, and we're just going to keep on going.
Well, that to that point, that's what George did too. There was a lot of stuff in 4 through 6 where things would get mentioned, and like Obi-Wan would talk about the Clone Wars, would be like, that sounds awesome. Then you wouldn't hear about it. Then it became a movie 20 years later. But I mean, so it's storytelling that is very very along the lines of how George Lucas would have made it. You
Mm-hmm.
hit the viewer with some things, and you let the viewer come to their own conclusion on other things. And I think that's what Filoni's doing.
Yeah, and and that example, I guess I would be a little bit more loose on that because Star Wars was brand new. There was nothing Star Wars, at that point. And you would think, even the Emperor was mentioned in the first movie, and there was no history about the Emperor. But
Yeah.
we kind of put two and two together. We realized that the Emperor was probably the leader or the head bad guy, and at that time that was enough for us. Same thing with the Clone Wars. We mentioned the Clone Wars, and we know by inference and history in the real world that wars are bad.
Mhm.
So we put the two and two together, and we accepted as okay. The Clone Wars were wars about clones for some reason, and we accepted it. But now I think it's a little different because there is so much Star Wars out there. There's so many stories. There's so much story to kind of sink your teeth into that I feel like if you don't give the audience or if you set up a certain story thread, the audience is going to start picking at it, and if they don't have any meat to it, then they're either going to abandon the narrative, or they're going to claim that it's bad storytelling or lazy writing or whatever it is that people are saying about it. I do feel obviously that I think people should be a little bit more patient with stuff like that because I think anybody that has watched Rebels and Clone Wars knows that Dave Filoni likes to kind of throw things in and expand on it in time. And thank you, Crystal, for agreeing with me that the check is in the mail.
I think Filoni is doing a good job in leaving the viewer wanting more. And that has been a fundamental problem with a lot of the Star Wars programming that has been coming out as of late. Is a lot of the programming is we're treated like idiots and everything is spelled out for us. And I think Filoni's trying to go the other way from that. And I think he's doing a good job. I do agree that a little bit more can probably be revealed. He is holding some things too close to the vest. But I mean, it's a fine line this day and age because, you explain too much, people are going to tune out. You explain too little, people are going to ask what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So it's just a tough position to be in as a storyteller.
And again, this goes to what I was saying. Star Wars is so replete with stories, comic books, audio, novels, et cetera, et cetera. I had a good friend of mine who was really into the movies, but he says, he asked me, he goes, I saw the episode of Ahsoka last night. How did that Star Destroyer get to that other galaxy? And I'm like, well, you either have to go back and watch Rebels and watch that series finale, or do a little research. I also feel like audiences nowadays expect to be spoon-fed, and they don't. It's hard for them to kind of put on their thinking cap and I don't know, maybe analyze. Maybe people just don't like to analyze narratives too much and want everything kind of easy. But I think, obviously for Uber nerds like us who kind of absorb as much as we can with this franchise, we get a bigger kick out of it. But the casuals, as I call them, I feel bad for them.
Yeah, but at the same time, one of my favorite quotes throughout history is people are only as stupid as you allow them to be. So hopefully, people can piece it together and they don't need to be spoon-fed. And this could be a start of that with the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah. And
I feel like with Ahsoka, they have Dave has 8 episodes, right? So he's just trying to figure out how can he tell the story he wants to tell without it being 4 episodes of getting people caught up and explaining away every little thing that they're going to have questions about, right? I mean, all of us old original trilogy fans are going to be like, where was she during the original trilogy? Why didn't Luke know who she was? Why didn't she intervene with Vader? Like, why didn't she pop up there, right? But she didn't, right? She didn't. And so for some reason she didn't, and we just have to accept that she didn't do that. And is it really important that you know that to go forward with the story where it is? I think it might be relevant to the first time she meets Luke, but it's not relevant to when she's with Sabine, And so I think that that's kind of where you are. I mean, you see that even with Mandalorian season 3, where so much of what happened to Mandalore would have been revealed in the show as a core concept of like what you're trying to get to, which is the restoration of Mandalore. And even that was really condensed into almost nothing, I mean, just, very basic outline sketchiness. So they're really, really, I think, trying to do an economical job of kind of doling out as much backstory as they can, while still trying to keep into 8 episodes, because you only got eight episodes to do what you want to do.
Right. And I actually think they're doing a fairly decent job of it. I thought that a lot of it was going to be exposition between characters, like explaining things that they already know, for the benefit of, casual fans. But, that first episode, I mean, right off the bat, they mentioned Ezra, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's see let's see where that goes. Oh, you said something I was going to rebut, but
me? I said something you were going to rebut?
I was gonna rebut or add to it, but well, maybe it'll come to me. All right, so getting back to the Thrawn sequences, how cool were those stormtroopers? I think, what is that process, the Japanese process of kintsugi? We see it obviously in the sequel trilogy when Kylo Ren fixes his mask. I always thought, don't they have like 3D printers in the future? Why don't you just go out and get a new mask? But it's interesting for what it represents, the healing of the healing power, I guess, of gold, or the repairing of the old. It's fascinating that they've used this terrestrial method of redemption into the Star Wars galaxy. And again, George Lucas having some deep connections with Japanese culture with the original trilogy. I think it definitely fits. But a character like Enoch, which is Thrawn's number one, his bodyguard or whatever, besides the fact that he's got a very iconic look, really great mask, very different than anything that we've seen before as far as stormtrooper variation. But I guess it kind of makes sense because they've been trapped in exile on this planet for many years, and they had to kind of do with what they can fit things with. What do you guys think of Enoch, and who do you think he is, or who do you think he represents, aside from the biblical reference, which if anybody wants to get into that, we can certainly do so.
Yeah, I mean, I could go right into the biblical reference. So I was raised very much in private school, so we did the whole biblical thing. But Enoch is a character basically from the Old Testament who was one of the early humans that lived for like 400, 500 years. And in the Bible, it says that Enoch walked with God and was no more. So basically, Enoch is immortal, basically. And according to the Catholic Bible, he eventually goes and is basically leader of the archangels in a massive battle, basically.
And he
so
was
very much
he
God's
was brought up to
man.
Right. He was brought up to heaven without actually having to die.
Yes,
Yeah.
without actually having to die. No. So I think that's really interesting that Dave is going with that very much biblical storyline of taking a character that's basically immortal and basically becomes second hand to God, leading archangels.
Yeah.
Yeah, the religious themes are really are really strong in this series, especially in the last 2 episodes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I think, I don't know if you guys will agree with me on this, but I definitely think with him putting like Enoch as almost like God's right-hand man. It kind of, to me, is almost symbolizing Thrawn as like a godlike figure, like a cult, a religious cult. And
Yeah,
Thrawn
and
being the godlike figure and Enoch being his second in command.
yeah, definitely listen to the music when we first see Thrawn. It's very church and organy. I think that's done on purpose. But it's
Also,
it's
the
fascinating.
chanting of his name is very almost like worship kind of. So I think there's definitely some kind of cult going on of some sort that's developed.
I found that odd, to be honest with you, when it first was on screen, because Thrawn doesn't strike me as a sort of culty, supernaturally person, right? He strikes me as a calculating Sherlock Holmes military leader, very logical leader. Yeah, and you know, in the EU, like I said, I didn't read the canonical books, but in the EU, the Nogri, of course, are the sort of superstitious people that he sort of has ownership of. But he argues quite a bit and does quite a bit of working around the mad clone Jedi that he's working with, right? Because he sort of keeps all that at arm's length. He's only interested in what it can get him and what use he can make out of it tactically. He doesn't buy into the religion. He doesn't buy into any of that stuff. And it's interesting that he seems to have been surrounded by nothing but supernatural stuff, at least for the last 10 years. And although it doesn't seem that what we've seen of him, that he kind of buys into that, it'll be interesting to see in the future episodes whether or not that's something he's embraced or it's something that he just has to deal with because he needs their help.
I think it's that.
When it comes to this, I think it's just kind of an Occam's razor thing where he needed an army and the Night Sisters gave him one, and now he's the commander of an army of the dead.
And there's no way out of this galaxy without their help.
Yeah, I would agree. I have a question. I have a question for you guys about this. So we don't know anything about this galaxy. We have this one planet, and we have the Night Sisters in control of it at some point, right? But they still are potentially, but they seem to be very winnowed down to just the last 3 plus whatever dead bodies they got in the basement. You have the rock people. You have these bandits, right? Then you have these like bandit people, which seem to be kind of, they have similar technology, armor as people in the galaxy in the galaxy far away. And I have is there any possibility that those bandits are actually ex-stormtroopers that left Thrawn because he was like converting them to dead people?
Yeah. Well, I like that theory.
To tell you the truth, and I do like that theory, but I was kind of confused at the existence of bandits on a barren planet because what are you stealing?
Yeah. I mean, are there other ships? Are they coming? Yeah, exactly. That's what led me to ask the question: where do they come from, and why are they there? And obviously there could be an entire republic, empire, warlords, all kind of stuff in that galaxy. We don't know because we've only been here for a little bit. But why are they there? And then I was like, well, maybe they're being converted or something like that. And those were the ones that were like, nope, not for me. I'm out. And
you might have a point because obviously Thrawn told Sabine about them and hey, be careful. Here's your weapons. Good luck. See ya. So obviously they know about them. I think that's a good theory.
Yeah.
Dave Richards has a question for us. Do you think Enoch is human, droid, or had modifications?
I think he was once human. I don't know if he's fully human anymore.
If we go back to the biblical stance, I think he is going to be human because if
it becomes something
becomes something more, or getting back to that reference, he gets pulled to heaven without dying. I think he is probably the only one that is undead. If we're going to go with that example, he's the only one that is undead.
But I think he's
and
been
his
somehow.
pull to heaven is going to be the other galaxy. I don't know.
Isn't that what happened to Maul didn't Maul and his brother, weren't they? They weren't dead, correct? They were but they were enhanced and or something. The Night Sister did something to them.
Was enhanced by the Night Sister magic.
I'm going with Enoch as that sort of thing versus the other ones all being green smoke creatures.
Yeah, I think he's been enhanced by Night Sister magic, possibly. But I think he's a lot. Yeah.
It could be a red herring because we spent five episodes wondering who Merrick was, and Merrick just ended up being a smoke monster.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but you know what though? I mean, Merrick gave us a clue as to who these other undead are. So I wouldn't discount that experience, for us fans as nothing.
but I'm just saying we overthought it a lot on Merrick. We thought there was going to be a grand reveal on the unmasking.
Sure, but you know what? There is still going to be a grand reveal. It just doesn't pertain to Merrick, but it's related to Merrick in some way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I thought? You honestly know what my very first thought was when Enoch turned around and I saw his helmet? I thought it looked like something that Mid-Journey AI would produce.
Oh yeah.
Like I was like, this looks just like if I'd have typed in Mayan Stormtrooper mask, this is what I would have came back out of this.
Well, you said Mayan too. I mean, there's a shot where Elsbeth and Thrawn are standing in front of like some sort of like from far away it looks like a pyramid, but it's kind of like a rock wall, and it's got Mayan hieroglyphs on it, which I noticed, which are really cool. I mean, again, getting back to the whole George Lucas thing, he just likes to pull things from terrestrial history.
I think that's what's great with what Dave Filoni is doing. He's taken so parts of mythology in here. Like you have, of course, Hati and Skoll, and then, of course, you have the three Night Sisters, which is symbolism of the three fates of Greek mythology.
Right.
So it's very interesting, all this mythology, and Dave is doing, I think, an excellent job bringing that all in together.
Yeah, Crystal was mentioning that too with regarding the three Night Sisters, and then Andrew, I think on one of his shows, we're talking about the three fates, which also comes into play. But absolutely. Let's get back to Shin and Balin, because it does seem like. And Ray, I'm not going to talk about the Shin and Sabine situation that you are so fond of talking about online.
listen. It's either Shin and Sabine or Sabine and Ezra, but somebody is doing something. I'm tired of Star Wars not having any loving, like even just regular romantic relationships. That's like 1/3 of all stories need some sort of romance. Come on, give me something.
Too funny. But it seems like Shin is not on board with all this witch stuff because she gives Balin a look every so often, especially when the witches are around. And I find that interesting.
She doesn't trust Thrawn either from the way she acts around him.
Yeah. Obviously. And then we get introduced to a new concept, the Boken Jedi, which are Jedi that were trained, after the fact, after Order 66. And that's kind of an interesting thing too. And I mean, technically, wouldn't Luke Skywalker also be a Boken Jedi?
Did you get the sense that that Boken Jedi were Jedi that were trained after the fall, or Jedi that were trained outside of normal? Because it's interesting to me that Balin would have the term Boken Jedi as like a term when there was no Jedi after, I
thought it meant Jedi trained in the wild, period. So
that's what I thought, yeah.
The Jedi Order who were trained out in the wild, who like their masters may have left or just whatever, and they were trained away from the Jedi Temple and everything. That's what I thought it meant, because how else would he have come up with a term? It must have been a term from the temple.
Could it? You remember in episode 1 where Qui-Gon Jinn, they weren't going to train Anakin, and Qui-Gon was like, "I'll take him as my Padawan learner," and they were like, "You can't have two apprentices." Blah 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 blah. Right? Yeah. I wonder if he had taken Anakin. Would Anakin be considered a Boken Jedi, or is Anakin considered a Boken Jedi because Obi-Wan took him and trained him, and he was never trained at the temple? Or if he wasn't, I don't actually know if he was trained at the temple at all. But
there was a time jump, so we don't really know that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. That concept, not even just the concept that they weren't legitimate Jedi, but that they had like somehow not been trained at the temple. They had been like trained outside the temple, even if it was with a legitimate master.
Like not with official channels or during an official training.
Well, it's like they were homeschooled. They didn't go to school.
Like
you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
they were homeschooled by their Jedi master.
I think if Qui-Gon had left with Anakin and trained him, I think Anakin would have been considered one of those Jedi because he wouldn't have been under the training regime of the Jedi Order and the Jedi Council. So yeah, definitely. But it makes me wonder.
A strict curriculum.
So when Yoda said to Luke in Return of the Jedi, "The last of the Jedi will you be?" Did he really mean the last of the non-Boken Jedi will you be? He just left that out.
He did. He did.
He did.
It was late. He was getting tired.
I mean, I wonder if how many of them survived the purge, because they wouldn't have been under Jedi records if they had been trained outside of the Order.
Well, you know what? That would explain why so many Jedi survived. If they weren't really, at the temple, if they weren't really in the core worlds, if they were just out in the wild, I'm a Jedi, but I wasn't trained there. And then,
exactly.
This might.
Is this something that the High Republic might have information on that we don't have? I feel like that's something maybe they might have addressed, how the Jedi were handling things a couple hundred years before, or their Jedi being.
Term was just created for this episode, so no mention of it in High Republic.
I'd just love to hear that conversation. I'm a Jedi, and Hu Yang just being like, "Are you though?
Are you really? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, where are your papers?"
Skywalker Academy has a good point, which outside the temple in the wild, Qui-Gon train him outside the Order if they didn't agree, which I think should have happened.
Well, Qui-Gon was expensive, so it didn't.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I mean, this episode kind of threw us for a loop. It really introduced a lot of new story elements and tidbits that are worth mentioning and teasing out. Before I ask you guys, anybody else in the chat have any topics or any finer points that you guys want us to address? Otherwise, I'll ask the panel if you guys had any other items that you guys wanted to discuss before we cap it off for the evening. And 2 episodes left. Do you guys see an Ahsoka season 2 on the horizon?
I do.
I don't, but I have a theory for that, but I don't.
Okay. Ray?
Do I think Filoni had an idea for Ahsoka season 2? I think he probably did. I think when they were sitting down envisioning the path to the movie, I think he had an idea for an Ahsoka season 2. I think the strike plus the whole streaming financial stuff that's been going on recently may or may not have impacted that plan. So I'm not actually sure we'll get a season 2, but I do think that there was a plan for it.
I think there's a demand for a season 2, but like Ray said, we have to realize Disney Plus is hemorrhaging money, and this series cost $120 million to make, and they're not getting the subscribers to cover that budget. So it's kind of hard to say that there will definitely be a season 2. I'm leaning towards yes. I think there will be, but will it compare in quality, or will the budget be slashed?
Or will they have less episodes?
On making things that cost this much money,
right? Or will they have less episodes?
I could see that. I could see them at some point. I expect that what we'll see is we will see them start to do like TV movies instead of episodes. Right? They'll do some sort of just a D+ movie
like
for some of these stories. Yeah. Just I mean, it'll just be one. It'll be a 90-minute thing, right, or whatever, or 2-hour thing. Mm-hmm. But it'll be a movie. It won't be 6 episodes because you can't go smaller than 6. Really, you might as well make it a movie at that point. But I could see them doing that sort of thing to give us the story. I mean, the challenge with Star Wars is once you start down that path, you have to tell the story to get to the point. And to make it make sense to people, you've got to give them enough content then to flesh it all out. And they've already, I think that Mando season 3, you see the fact that they lost Rangers of the New Republic, right? So they had to tie some of that into Mando season 3, which took some time away, which you can see them moving the pieces around. And so that impacted that season. And I think that you have to minimize that if you want to get to this New Republic movie that he wants to do with Thrawn and have the characters in a place where you don't start the movie and everyone goes, wait a minute, why does Sabine have ultimate force powers? But last time we saw her, she couldn't move anything in Ahsoka season 1, right? I mean, if there's this big gap in story. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage it. But I think the money in the end talks, right? I mean, they won't give it to them if they can't afford it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, Amanda, what was your theory then?
So I actually think they're going to kill Ahsoka off at the end of this.
Oh,
that is my theory. Yes,
it would make. I mean,
think...
it would make sense from what we heard in The Rise of Skywalker. But continue, Amanda.
Yeah. So my theory is I think one of the best ways to maybe explain her not being in the sequel trilogy and also not having anything to do with Luke's training or anything, is, killing her off, let her go out with a bang. But I think there's also a narrative perspective to it, too. I think Dave is going to make her the new sister in the Mortis arc with her death.
Okay. Or she stays in that galaxy for reasons.
Yeah.
But
I personally think he'll kill her off. Yeah.
Wow. Ahsoka is probably, everybody would say that Ahsoka is Dave Filoni's favorite character. Obviously, it's his creation. I would find it very difficult to believe that he would do that. But again, like I said, we heard Ahsoka's voice in Rey's ear when all the Jedi came from the past who are presumably dead. So if we heard Ahsoka's voice, then she had to have died sometime.
I mean, I didn't hear the same voices I hear on the Ahsoka show. I heard a voice.
That's a technicality.
I'm just saying the animated version is dead, kind of. I'm just saying.
How much death is there gonna be though? Because I mean, you got to address the elephant in the room. Unfortunately, Balin's not coming back. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. It sucks.
If they killed him off, though, we don't even know if they killed him off in this series, though. That's the thing.
Well, I have a theory on it because Shin's Padawan braid was very prominent in this episode. Yep. And I don't think, and Dave Richards is saying they both won't make it beyond the show. I don't think Balin makes it for obvious reasons, and I think Shin carries on his vision. And eventually she will, obviously she's not meant long for this world anyway, but I think she'll at least give it a go to try to continue what he started.
I think that narratively the most typical thing would be Balin gets them in a situation that isn't, like I said, he finds out there's something worse out there. He made a mistake, right? Whatever it is. And he sacrifices himself. He's an honorable man. You can see him sort of like being able to take that step to save the others. And that's where he ends up sort of, saves Shin, probably saves all of them, whatever it is. And then they can go on from there. I do think there's a good possibility that Thrawn's the only one that goes back to the galaxy and everybody else stays. That all the Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine and those folks end up staying. The only thing that makes me think that might not be true is you have Hera back in the other galaxy, still kind of that storyline sitting out there, which has to be tied off somehow. But it does beg the question: what does the movie look like with Thrawn? Because I don't think you're not going to get much of Thrawn. I feel like once he gets back to the galaxy, because that's the movie. And you can't build that up yet, right? Yeah, you got to leave that, and then the movie's going to show you here's Thrawn with all his forces in the Night Sisters, and they've done X, Y, Z, and now they're on the move, right? So you're not going to get that in the show. The question is, what does the movie look like then, depending on where Ahsoka and these folks are? Does it look much more like the EU heir to the Empire, using the more traditional characters? or is it a pure Rebels Mando versus sort of just those characters involved? Which I think is a harder sell to a general audience, right? I mean, once again, you have to figure if you're trying to sell this movie, and it's right after Return of the Jedi, right? People are watching it, so that's the time frame. You sell it with Luke's face, right? With the OT3 somehow, that people understand those characters as gateways into potentially in these other characters. Or do you launch with Ahsoka and you just hope Baby Yoda, you put him on the poster, you put him as big as you can, and you hope it brings people in? I know that's a little off topic, but
I kind of want one of those rock monsters to come back with them, so Baby Yoda hits it with a stick. Kind of.
He would eat it. He would eat it. You'd see him like a oyster. He'd be like, and that'd be it.
That would be it.
He would eat it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting too in a real world perspective, because obviously we've got the strike. Obviously we've got Disney is losing a lot of money. When is it that that fans are going to get this movie? Everything has been pushed back production wise, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see when this entire process gets squared away when it comes to producing new Star Wars, especially on the big screen, if they're going to do big screen and not Disney Plus movies. But, I always love Star Wars on the big screen, going to a theater with other people. It's just an amazing experience to kind of feed off of the energy of other fans, and you just don't get that with streaming unless you invite strangers over to your house.
I mean, you can create watch parties, but it's just not the same.
It's not the same at all.
It's just not the same. It's not the same as not being in a movie. Now, I do have a question.
I think we woke up. I think we woke up Crystal. Baby Yoda? Yeah. What?
No,
see, there you go. That's it.
Yeah.
And the movie. Do you think the Imperial Remnant will be behind him or not?
I think so. I think that there's a reason that they set that up in the regular galaxy. That people are still kind of infatuated with the Empire proper, and I think some of them might remember Thrawn because obviously they were around when Thrawn was still in this galaxy, so. And he was mentioned by the hologram people in the last season.
Hellion.
Yeah.
You don't introduce Hellion unless you're going to put Hellion and Thrawn in a scene together. Sherlock Holmes and Watson.
So you definitely think? Do you think all of the Imperial Remnant will be behind him, or do you think?
I think
that'll probably be the movie.
Order.
Well, I think the First Order stuff is still going to be out there in the unknown regions. I don't know that they're necessarily going to be connected in a direct way, except that whatever's left over once Thrawn is defeated and/or goes back to his home with the Chiss or whatever's going to happen, right? Whatever's left of that remnant of the remnant will end up going and either joining with or becoming the First Order. I mean, I think it would be interesting if they. So they won't. I don't think they'll do this because you have the Night Sisters now. But originally, my thought was, well, they have to have some sort of Force component. So they're probably going to do something along the lines of some mad Jedi thing, like that. They have to have somebody stand in for what was in the EU books. And my thought would be interesting to see Palpatine sort of producing some sort of like a Snoke or somebody that would be there that would kind of be anti whatever Thrawn was doing, or at least a check on Thrawn. Because you have to figure Palpatine's there and he's watching this. He doesn't really want Thrawn to succeed if Thrawn is doing his own thing, right? And not actually doing what Palpatine wants him to. And at this point, you get the sense that Thrawn is literally sort of out on his own. And I don't know that he's going to get plugged back into, hey, Exegol exists when he gets back. Not sure.
I really want to see a power struggle between Thrawn and Giancarlo Esposito.
Or
his clones.
Provided that he survived Mando season 3.
We also have Brendel Hux running around as well with his First Order stuff going on. So that would be an interesting conflict as well.
I mean, it's certainly a point in the story where it branches off into several different things. I think, and unfortunately, I think that's the dilemma that was created by, introducing the sequel trilogy that far ahead of time, because we've got the chunk of empty narrative that we don't know anything about.
I don't think you'll get it in the movie. The movie will be strictly the scroll will the crawl will say, Thrawn, and
somehow Thrawn returned.
Grand Admiral Thrawn's returned, and he's from another galaxy,
Yeah,
whatever, and he's making a move, and it'll be the Imperial Remnant, and that'll be it. It'll be simplified. They'll fight him. He'll be done. And then some the comics, some book, something will pick up somewhere saying, "Hey, this is how this attaches to the sequel trilogy." I don't think we'll get it. The question the biggest question to me is how many of the original trilogy characters will we see in this time period at all? Right now it's all shadowy. It's in a different galaxy. It's okay. Luke doesn't know about it. He's building a hut. But at some point, and when it's the war, you got to figure they're going to call in everybody, right?
Right. It's like what I said. When the Defenders were fighting the bad guys on the Netflix show, where the hell were the Avengers? You got to bring in the heavy hitters. You got to tell Luke. You got to tell Leia. They've got to be involved somehow. Otherwise, it's
That's the thing. I don't know how you can do this movie without Luke, Han, and Leia. Like, I really don't, because why wouldn't they be there? I mean, Luke and Han were both generals, if I remember correctly, and then you have Leia, and I'm like, how can they be missing from such a big battle?
The question
it's a big galaxy and a big war. I mean, look at World War II. You had people in the Pacific and you had people in Europe. I mean, you can't say, hey, where was General Omar Bradley when Patton was invading, France to liberate the French? I mean, that can be easily explained away.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but people are going to want to see Han, Luke, and Leia. I mean, that's
Harrison Ford made it very clear he's not coming back.
Well, here's the other.
Luke and Leia than
absolutely.
New characters,
But here's the biggest question really is, what do we do? What does Disney do with these characters when it comes to the actors? Do they continue with the 3D stuff? Do they continue with the the face technology, or do they just recast? And if they recast, how many fans are you going to piss off?
The challenge with recasting in the movie is that it kind of defeats the purpose of the characters drawing people into the movie, because it's not Mark Hamill. It's not,
right.
You know what I mean? I mean, if you show three people that aren't those people up on screen, if you have a Han Solo issue, right? The movie Han Solo, right? You have an issue of like, okay, how do I know who these people are? And then you're like working to introduce the new actors, which I'm not saying is necessarily wrong, but that's the question, right? Then you're like, wait, well, most people know who Ahsoka and Mando and Baby Yoda are. Now I got to go into these new people. Now, I will say personally, for me, the technology they used in Book of Boba Fett for Luke was, pretty astounding. I mean, I didn't think I detected no uncanny valley in the visuals of that, aside from when he was talking. But so, like, to me, that was really good. I mean, I think you could do that, but expensive, probably. I mean, how expensive is it to keep him on screen, right? Right,
and it's going to depend too when this movie comes out. When the research and development is obviously still going on. You've got the Indiana Jones movie that just was released, which I thought was less of an uncanny. I don't think we're going to get a 100% uncanny valley less sequence of events that will happen. I mean, maybe one day.
I thought the Luke thing looked way better than Indy 5. I don't know. I don't know what about it. I thought the Book of Boba Fett stuff looked fantastic. Maybe that guy they hired from YouTube that then quit, I heard, like a month later, he finished that and he walked out. And you just need to hire him back, pay as much money as you can.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's interesting.
I think the only doable one, oddly enough, is the one that's dead, and that would be Leia, because she's a senator now, and you can use archive footage and hologram and kind of do what they did with the Emperor in Empire and Return and kind of mask it a little bit and use her voice. But Han and Luke, de-aging both of them would be hugely expensive. And if it's not done right, it'll just be like farcical. And I mean, good writing can take care of that. So the first thing, the strike tentatively ended today. I just saw before I logged on. So the strike tentatively ended today. Get good writers in there to address these concerns, because you can't. It has to be addressed.
Yeah, now I think the big challenge for the movie is that you still have to have a narrative, right? Like the original EU Thrawn story was about Luke trying to figure out how he was worried about teaching Jedi, right? He was the first of the new Jedi, right? As Obi-Wan called him. And he was worried about teaching them. The story was really a Mara Jade origin story. And it was about Leia coming to grips with being a Skywalker and being the daughter of Vader. And it was about Han dealing with the fact that he was respectable and he was going to be a dad. That's what the stories were actually about, right? And you have to figure who are the characters and what is the story about with them? It can't just be them fighting a war. It could be, I guess, but that's typically not what Star Wars is. So what characters are you following and what are they doing and what are they going to become at the end of that movie? It's only one movie, which is also weird to me. It feels like it should be a trilogy if it's going to be Thrawn, but I think that's where you get into.
Have something, I don't know. Like Rey has to come back somehow. Well,
I actually, I mean, to be honest with you, this is where I get worried because Disney's up there weighing the scales on what movies are going to happen. First of all, I think Mangold's goes away first. I think that's an easy. Don't need to learn about the origins of the Jedi. Nobody knows anything about them, so that's okay. So then you're left with these two. You've kind of promised Dave, right? But Rey is what everybody knows. That's what the general audience knows. They know who Rey is.
That's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, where I think that we as a fan base might, there's probably a third of us that dislike her, a third of us that are ambivalent, and a third of us that like her, let's say. I think general audiences know her, and she is sort of the face of Star Wars to some extent for general audiences. I'm thinking my parents, people who don't, watch any of the shows. So from Disney's point of view, she might be the better bet, which is an interesting kind of thought.
Might be, but the director is what worries me. It's not even Daisy Ridley coming back because I don't think Daisy Ridley got a fair shake because the writing and directing was so atrocious in the sequel trilogy. But this director has to her credits like 2 documentaries and an episode of Miss Marvel, and they're handing her Star Wars, and that's what worries me about that movie.
Yeah, well, and Ro, I think we said on the Twitter Spaces. I mean, I think you're not going to see a unified Star Wars between the shows and the movies until you see some sort of creative head over it. Because the problem being that, Dave Filoni might introduce the world between worlds and all this fancy stuff, but they're going out and basically hiring people to do the movies, right? Do the Rey movie that aren't in-house necessarily, don't have to really listen. From my interactions with Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter, the create like J.J. Abrams basically hired Bad Robot to go make the movie. Go write it, go figure it out. And obviously they had interactions with him, but the creatives had a lot of control. The directors had a lot of control. That I think in other publishing like High Republic and things, I think there's a lot more that Lucasfilm can kind of control things from a story perspective. So I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I agree with you. I would be concerned about getting the right writer and director in there. Obviously, you see what happened with the sequels. It just didn't how they connected with each other, movie to movie. All it takes is just a little planning, just a little.
Yeah.
Gilroy. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah.
That'll be mine.
But it's interesting. I mean, some of the best Star Wars was written by non-Star Wars fans. So
very true.
I'll leave you with that thought. I know a lot of people's like, oh, get somebody in there that knows the lore. Irvin Kershner just loved movies about relationships, and that happens to be one of the best Star Wars out there. So
I don't know if it was with you or on another program where I do say we look back on George Lucas with rose-colored glasses and a lot of the stuff he wrote because the prequel trilogy, we all know about sand. And we're overlooking that now, and we're kind of just we want George back. We chased George out.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. There's a weird revisionism that's happened within the fandom. I mean, it's not revisionism. I just think that the young people grew up, right, and they're a lot of the voice you hear, especially on social media around the fandom. And it's not the people who are in their 40s who. Honestly, the prequel trilogy, I did not agree with most of the story choices that he made in the prequel trilogy, and I didn't think that they looked all that good, and I didn't think the acting was especially good in them, right? So, it's Star Wars, and there are moments I really love in those movies, but to me, Star Wars is, the OT, and then it goes to Timothy Zahn, and then it jumps to Gilroy, and then that's the kind of feel I like in my Star Wars, right? And I've said it to Ro before. I mean, I'm not the animated, the Clone Wars, that animation style. I don't like it that much, and so I don't tend to watch it that much. So I'm even outside of that in a way, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of where I am.
Wow, the original trilogy, and then Timothy Zahn. That's a lot of curves there.
I'm a Boken Star Wars fan. Okay,
there you go.
I was raised in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, I just want to thank you guys for joining me on this edition of Scarif Live, and I also want to thank the chat. You guys have been wonderful for sticking with us. Why don't we go around the table and just say a little hello there, and where do we find someone like Ambrose?
Someone like Ambrose. You can find me. I'm publishing this week on our website, geeknewsnow.net. We are writers too. And tonight in about, oh my gosh, this one ran longer than it usually does, about 35 minutes. I will be back on it. If you want to go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/geeknewsnowofficial. I will be on the Geek News Gauntlet going over the week's news. So it's a never-ending race for me, especially since I have to put this one to bed. But yeah, you can find my writing on the site, and you can find me every week on the Geek News Gauntlet.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. And Ray, thank you very much for joining us here tonight and your contributions to Twitter Spaces. It's always fun to see you pop in there. Where can people find you?
I'm really just on Twitter, Ray Gunn Richards. I don't do anything else. Used to do a horror podcast, but it is currently on hiatus.
All right. Sounds good. We'll say hello to you there. And Amanda, what's up with your bad self?
Yeah, so I run a podcast at Level Up Arcade. We do a podcast every 2 weeks. Our next episode, like I talked about earlier, is about Assassin's Creed. So you can find me there at Level Up Arcade 15. And if you want to follow my personal, you can also find me at Jedi Caligula 89.
Excellent. And just a reminder real fast, everybody in the chat or who's watching it in the replay, the Kai Patterson audio interview, please listen to that. We'll have details on how to win this awesome Star Wars Squadrons. What's the name of the ship? The Marauder from Bad Batch. And look, it's got like little action figures. What is that? It's Wrecker and Omega. It's so cute. They're the size of my thumbnail. Excellent. Micro Galaxy Squadron giveaway here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. And for the rest of the Red 5 network, we can be found at bio.link/Red5. There is a YouTube or podcast waiting for you, something for everyone. Until next time, I'll go ahead and announce who the winner is of that thing on next week's show. But in the meantime, this is Ro. Thank you to our panel, and thank you to our wonderful group of chat peeps. You guys were awesome. Always wonderful to see everybody in the chat. Thank you, and may the force be with you. We'll quick one word predictions for next week's episode. Ambrose.
More twists and turns. So twists.
Ray.
I'm gonna say Bendu.
Oh, there you go.
Why not?
Amanda.
I'm going to say Ezra, lightsaber battle.
Very nice. That seems to be inevitable, almost as inevitable as Thanos. Until next time, this is Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Find us wherever you find your other favorite podcasts. Until next time, that's the Scuttlebutt.